What's up, everybody? This is the Powershift Media Podcast. And if you can't tell, we're coming at you with improved audio. This is Matt.
This is Nathan.
And what we've done is something that's been requested for a while, is improved audio. We've gotten some feedback that our content was good, but our audio definitely did need work, and we were well aware of it. So we went out, we got this Shure MV88 microphone, and it's said to be the one for podcasting on iPhone. And we've got our audio dialed in to where Nathan and I just kind of eat the mic.
Yep.
Obviously, the dogs are still out running around, but this should drown it out quite a bit. And first things first, we're really excited to relaunch the podcast. Anybody who's listening, we're in the state of Ohio. The coronavirus is out and rampant. It's got us all quarantined. Last week, I was out with the flu, so we weren't able to podcast. And the week before, Nathan was extremely sick, so it just hadn't really been in our favor to podcast, but we are extremely happy to be back, and we hope you guys enjoy the new audio that we are bringing.
Yep, for sure.
I guess one of the first things we'll dive right into, since it's been a bit, Nathan over here, even with the coronavirus going on, obviously it's all over the news. It's something everybody's talking about, but business has been very ramped up for you.
Very busy, that's for sure. I'm actually falling behind because of being sick the past couple days and with everything that's going on, but definitely trying to get caught up anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you've been busting some ass, and ironically, obviously Nathan had announced that he's got a Mazda Speed 6 that he picked up. But we have another Mazda 6 sitting outside in a weird, ironic turn of events.
Yeah, it is, actually. I hadn't really given a second thought to a Mazda 6 in general, or a Speed 6 or Speed 3, and then I purchased a Speed 6, and now I have a customer V6 Mazda 6, and, within a couple weeks span, it's pretty ironic.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing what, an engine replacement on that thing?
Yep, this one, I haven't got to dig into it yet, but they just said that it started running like crap, and they went to put water in it, and it just started leaking out from everywhere in the engine. So that tells me it probably threw a rod, and it's just gushing out from anywhere and everywhere in the the cooling passages in the engine.
Yeah, that's always a pretty safe bet that you have an engine that has a large problem. Water's just leaking out of multiple orifices within the motor.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously you've got that going on. I mean, and right on cue, there goes the dogs. But, yeah, you have that going on, and I've been trying to get parts ordered for the RX-7, which is not the easiest thing in the midst of a pandemic. And again, we do apologize for the dogs. It's ironic, I'm discussing improved audio, but it should definitely drown out a lot of it. But yeah, I've kind of had a rough time trying to get shit ordered for the RX-7 because, as it turns out, when there's a pandemic all throughout the country, places stop shipping things. For anybody who hasn't taken notice, Amazon's not even doing the prime shipping currently, so it's been a while since we podcasted, but I did order the oil cooler lines, the oil metering pump lines, and I keep forgetting to bring the shit here, but I have, at my house, I got 4 quarts of Idemitsu rotary premix, which is what you pour in the gas tank when you make unfortunate life decisions and drive rotary cars. I have 5 quarts of Idemitsu 20W50 race rotary oil, which is kind of fucked up because, I guess to segue into that, my car definitely has the oil metering pump intact, and not only is it intact, but I've bought everything to have you rebuild it.
Yep.
And obviously, if you know rotaries, you're not supposed to run a synthetic in a rotary. But ironically, the oil everybody says to run is the Idemitsu Racing Rotary Oil. The fun fact about that is it's synthetic.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of a mixed subject because one of my college professors at the University of Northwestern Ohio, anybody who's attended there, I don't know if he still works there or not, but he is a huge or was a huge rotary guru, and that's all that they ran was Royal Purple full synthetic oil and all of his race cars, street cars, and he loved it. So,
I
but
mean, it is a weird one because, yeah, you didn't have great results in
no,
your black car with
and
synthetic.
it wasn't like a catastrophic result. It was just a very very noticeable drop in horsepower.
Right, and as a, I'll kind of toot my own horn. I consider myself to be an oil expert. Again, a job I once had required me to learn all the shit about oil, and one of the things that makes synthetics superior is they resist burning.
Mm-hmm.
But under what I'm assuming, and I haven't actually researched the Idemitsu Racing oil, but it was ran in the 737, the 767, the Le Mans, the cars that, propelled Mazda to the first Asian Le Mans victory. Those cars ran oil metering pumps, and they ran that oil. So what I'm assuming is that that oil, while being synthetic, is formulated to intentionally not resist burning. It's not a cheap oil. It is a very unconventional one. It's hard to find. Mazda Tricks has it. I ordered the 5 quarts with the added premix, a drain plug, a filter. I mean, it's not a cheap oil to go out and buy, but the general consensus is that it is the one that, protects the apex seals, and it still does burn. Everybody really swears by it, but thinking back to your experience with it in your car, you ran what, Mobile 1?
Yeah, and
Mobile 1 I'm not a fan of to begin with.
That was before the days. That was like when Mobile 1 was supposed to be the best oil, and before we realized, that it's great for economy, and that's about it.
Yeah, for a beater car like my Geo Prism that I had back in the day with the 4AG in it.
Yep.
Great for a car like that. But when I really started turning against Mobile 1 was my red DSM, where I would go beat the piss out of it, my oil pressure would drop. And that's when I really started realizing that it wasn't as good as we thought it was. And I started running things like Redline and Rotella, and I've never had those problems. But yeah, it's one of those weird things I laugh about because rotaries, burning oil is an essential part of how that engine works. And the oiling system accounts for 30% of the cooling capacity of the engine. So your oil choice is extremely important when you're running a turbocharged rotary. So I had settled on the Idemitsu, and I went with the Dash 10 AN oil cooler lines. And the way I see it is not only does it get rid of the old lines, but these RX-7s are older than I am now. And I've heard more than one horror story about people who had the stock oil cooler lines rupture and literally garbin engine. So for anybody listening who has a turbo too, or even just a non-turbo, I guess it's really imperative to replace those oil cooler lines and make sure if you're going to retain your metering pump that you rebuild it. But it's fucking expensive to buy these things. The oil cooler lines with all the fittings was $200, and to revamp the oil metering pump system was another $250. So if you're gonna have one of these cars, just know that these are things that you absolutely should think about. They're things I'm glad I have in my possession now, but oh yeah, it kind of hits you like a shockwave. You start realizing that no parts on the RX-7 are platform shared with anything else. So obviously your cost of maintenance and ownership is just going to be a little bit higher. Nothing that remotely scares me away, but something I kind of wanted to talk about as I've been amassing parts. And I tried ordering some parts the other day, and as of right now, that vendor shut down due to COVID-19. So I really hope that vendor survives this. I know that it's going to hurt a lot of small businesses, so anybody who's in the car community, if you have a vendor that you use, make sure you guys are supporting these vendors. I'm not paid by any vendor, but places like Mazda Tricks, Racing Beat, Atkins Rotary,
Cork Sport. Well, not so much now rotary stuff, but
just any of them, honestly.
what was the place that had the flange, the exhaust flange that
that
is sold for the Speed 6, and they have Mazda parts?
That's Himney Racing.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's who makes the oil cooler line kit. So anybody out there who has any of these rotary cars, make sure you're not going to eBay to go get your shit. These eBay guys, I have nothing against them, but they have no overhead. They're running this as a drop ship operation, which I get. But these vendors that have, actual staff and shit like that, just make sure when they're back open, you show them the love, because without them, we have a big problem getting parts for cars like this. And the same goes for DSMs. Obviously, places like Busher Racing and places like AMS, J Racing, Morrison Fabrications. You got to make sure you guys are supporting the people that support the community. Everybody really does need it right now, for sure.
And I do want to clarify one thing on the eBay for the RX-7 stuff. The brand, I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, is LRB Speed. They do a lot more like dress-up stuff, radiator cooling plates, other kind of stuff like that. They are eBay based, but I know that they are genuine on their own, and they're real popular in the community. So
same goes for Rotary Works as well. Yeah. Rotary Works mostly is a lot of CX Racing parts, and I have none against CX Racing at all. They were always really supportive to the DSM community, but Rotary Works does actually have RX-7 shop cars, and while they are largely an eBay-based company, they do actually have a facility, and they actually answer the phones when you call, because I was asking about their V-mount kit. So shout out to Rotary Works. I actually am going to be ordering my front mount through them here very shortly. They're out in Cali, and Cali is really hit right now with COVID-19, so, obviously it's important to me that these vendors weather this storm. Here in Ohio, we're feeling it. I'm a truck driver, and it ramps up my business technically, but I'm seeing how it's affecting everything. So just everybody in general, don't forget the people in the community. And
it seems almost like business is kind of booming, though, from everything that I've seen. All the different companies that, like FP, like Force Performance, there was somebody else, I think maybe Extreme PSI, a bunch of different companies that I've seen they're in full swing. It seems like people might be at home and they wanted to spend the money and maybe just have been too busy, or have had a list of stuff that they've needed and been kind of contemplating it, and now that they're quote unquote quarantined or stuck at home, for if their job is shut down or something like that. So it's kind of maybe pushing more people to spend a little bit more money, even though it's kind of times are tough. I don't know. It just seems like kind of business seems to be picking up a little bit almost. I mean, me and the kits that I've been selling,
right?
That's it's not exactly a cheap tool per se, or inexpensive tool, where it's a pretty big investment for somebody, and they've been selling pretty decently even during the time of crisis.
The crappy thing is Extreme PSI is an awesome company, and I have no doubt they'll be okay. But obviously they're based right outside of Philadelphia in a city called Bensalem, and it's a city I used to run a lot of freight to with my last company. PA seems to be doing pretty decently okay in terms of the COVID-19 outbreak, but it's weird because so many of these RX-7 companies like Racing Beat, Rotary Works, Himney Racing, Mazda Tricks, those guys are all California based, and then Atkins is, I believe, based in Florida. Florida seems to not be, as affected. It's weird. All the beaches and shit are still open in Florida right now. But California is on a pretty heavy lockdown, so some of those vendors I have been using, they're definitely feeling it, and they have kind of shut down for business as of right now. But yeah, places out in PA, places out in Florida, they don't seem to be taking it quite as hard, but obviously we know it's only a matter of time. A city like Bensalem, which is where Extreme PSI is very populous dense, so... And obviously Force Performance is out in Texas, and Texas just doesn't give a fuck in general, so... I don't know. It's kind of a weird one, but obviously to not just the vendors, but everybody in the automotive community, I hope everybody's okay out there and everybody weathers the storm, but, you do kind of worry about the vendors because business is kind of driven down right now. I mean, here in Ohio, all of our restaurants, we can't dine in.
Yep, everything's carry out.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of small companies in my area in Dayton that I don't know that will necessarily weather it, and, kind of segues into a little research project that I've been doing for an article I'm throwing together. I called 7 local car dealerships throughout Ohio. I won't name names. I will in my article because I do have permission, but I don't want to fuck up my article, so sorry about it. But, out of 7 dealerships I called, 2 of them bluntly told me they don't think they're going to be able to stay open through this, as in they will probably permanently have to close their doors.
Wow.
Meaning 20 to 30 employees at 2 of these dealerships probably won't have a job. The other 5 told me they will likely weather it, but sales are not at all what they need them to be. So 2 of them, and one of them I know pretty well, probably ain't going to make it. And that's a sad thing.
Which goes back to the last time that we podcast and me in my venture of trying to start a car dealership. So my process is still actually going through the state of Ohio. I did everything, and now I'm just strictly waiting on the response of the state. I'd done everything, submitted everything that I needed, so now it's just kind of a waiting game. So I imagine that under normal circumstances, it's 4 to 6 weeks turnaround time to get your dealer license. Well, I'm going to imagine that's probably going to be set back quite a bit because of this, so it's just one of those things where it's not anything that I was relying on making money anyways. It was kind of a thing that a friend of mine, I had wanted to open a car lot back in the day. It fell through, but now I kind of have another opportunity. And me and my dad have always liked to go to dealer auctions or, auctions in general and try and buy cars. So, but kind of skewing away from that. But I imagine that what my original point was, I believe that there may actually be a boom after all of this is done, though.
Yeah.
Even though they may go out of business, they may be able to, recoup by, everybody is going to want and get out, everybody that's been stuck in their house, everybody that's been planning all this different stuff over these weeks or months that everybody's been quarantined. I think that we may actually see a big boom in the industry.
Not just that, dealerships like yourself with your business model will have a lot smaller of an overhead than...
essentially no overhead.
Yeah, versus these bigger dealerships, and honestly... not to point any fingers whatsoever, but the 2 dealerships that told me they probably won't weather the storm had one thing in common, and they were Ford dealerships. Both of them. The Hyundai dealership, I spoke to a Hyundai dealer, a Kia dealer, and a Toyota dealer. They had a fairly positive outlook. But the Ford dealers, for whatever reason, seem to really be feeling it. And I don't necessarily know what the correlation is. I plan to do my homework on it. But honestly, smaller dealers like you, I think, will boom because... And again, we don't talk politics here. It's something we just don't do. But President Trump is saying he's going to be sending out $1,000 checks to anybody that makes under 65,000 in a year. So that's a large part of the population. And granted, right now, you really can't spend money on anything. So, coupled with that, once this does pass, people are probably going to have a decent surplus of money. Might be looking to grab a beater, might be looking to grab a project. So, for people like you, I think that's going to have a nice effect on what it is you're trying to do.
And my initial plans are to work with what do I want to say, like lending companies. So
they're going to be eager.
Yeah, especially with people that all these people with $1,000 checks that are willing to, make a down payment to get into a $4,000 or $5,000 car. I mean,
yeah,
$4,000 or $5,000 gets you a lot of a daily driver, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, $4,000 or $5,000. Honestly, there's a lot of shit you can buy for that. A4s, even cars like my Mirage, like a 2015 Mirage, you can get into that for about $6,000 and have a hell of a daily. Slow, but you'll have a very reliable daily. So
incredible fuel economy.
Yeah, exactly. People are going to be looking to buy things like that. But what's nice is I think more and more people are going to buy gas guzzling shit right now, because here in Ohio, in the Dayton area, gas is down to $1.49, and I can't tell you the last time I've seen it that low. Needless to say, right now, having a car like, I don't know, a 4.6 Mustang or an LS1 F-body makes a lot of sense, because gas is so low. There's a lot of industries that are affected by this very unfortunate pandemic. But for the automotive community, it does have that silver lining of people aren't flying right now. Everybody is driving. And if gas stays this low for a while, it's not so irresponsible to have something like that. It's not necessary. Like shit, the RX-7 is not going to get good fuel economy. So right now is a good time to have a car like an RX-7.
Yep.
You can enjoy it on the cheap, and
anything V8 powered right now is, it's not out of the realm of possibility on affordability, I guess. It's not.
No.
It's not going to break the bank, but how long is this going to really last?
That's what I don't know. Honestly, I think some of these industries, and this all does tie into the automotive industry. The airline industry is really hurting right now, and somebody had told me flights are like nothing. So just out of curiosity, I'd priced a flight from the Cincinnati airport all the way to like Miami, Florida, and you can get that flight round trip for $88, which is unfucking believably cheap. So, in lieu of the fact people aren't flying, and people aren't really driving all that much either, it's probably gonna grab the industry for a little while. Obviously, it'll probably make its comeback. There will be some bullshit excuse down the road and the oil will surge back up. But for right now, for the automotive enthusiast, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's unfortunate how we got here, but it's not a bad time to own a fun project where you can maybe go out and go blast some back roads to try to get your mind off of what's going on.
Right now is the perfect time to have that project, because you're going to have plenty of time to do it. And maybe you're saying, well, I might have this project, but I don't know where to start, or I don't know how to work on it. Well, now's the perfect time to learn.
Yeah, it is. I mean, honestly, what else are you going to go do? A lot of states are just like us in Ohio, to where you're very restricted on what you can do. And unfortunately, a lot of people are out of work right now. But supposedly unemployment's getting paid, so people still have money coming in.
Yep.
So obviously you're going to get bored out of your mind. Now's a great time to start fucking with things and figuring it out.
And I know if you're like me, when I was working full-time, I just didn't have time to work on my own projects, and that was the only limiting factor, was the time. So now it's, take advantage of the time off and get stuff done.
Oh yeah, right now there's not an abundance of a lot of things, but time there is quite an abundance of. I mean, in my industry, we're actually ramping up because obviously right now, and it's ironic, but this is probably the first time since I've been driving truck we actually are getting respect in my industry. Usually everybody loves to shit all over us, but right now everybody's kissing our ass because of what it is we're doing. So I don't necessarily have the free time because this has sparked a very unexpected busy season. But it's good because, well, I have an RX-7 sitting outside that debils all my money. But for people in other industries, yeah, this is a great time to maybe learn how to set up a chassis or get that motor back in the car that you hadn't really gotten around to yet before you lose your damn mind,
Do all free mod stuff that you can do, pull all your rusty nuts and bolts and brackets off and wire wheel them, or, take in, if you have a sandblaster, sandblast them. If not, wire brush and paint them, clean them up. Just do any little detail stuff that, is quote unquote time consuming. And then, it slowly adds up to the attention to detail. I don't know, just little simple things that make a car look a little bit more complete, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, now is honestly a great time to get around to doing some of that stuff, obviously, and maybe take it farther than what you originally planned on, because I know a lot of people were kind of hustling to get into quote-unquote race car season, but right now, it's going to be hard to tell when that season might come into, so...
It's strictly Mexico season.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, it's all outlaw shit. So, I know for me to really get the car painted, I just need to get the front bumper and the side skirts ordered, and then get the rest of the parts on the car. But, basically to take my mind off all this unfortunate stuff that's going on, I'm really looking forward to whipping the RX-7 around, and I'm really wanting to see you whip around the Speed 6.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, being as busy as I am with customer vehicles, but hopefully I'll be able to get everything caught up soon and work on something of my own again. But if not, I'm thankful for the work, though. So,
I mean, ironically, the last time we podcasted, we ended up, stopping the podcast, and we had ended on the note we were going out to the garage to go have some fun with the new plasma cutter, and let's talk about that for a minute, because there's some funny parts of the story. Immediately after that podcast, that is exactly what we did. We went out, we hooked up the plasma cutter, and we started cutting metal off of the Speed 6. A couple things to note if you have a plasma cutter is, number one, under no circumstance should you use a long extension cord.
Unless it's rated for the right amperage.
Yes.
That one was very small.
Yeah. What we had inadvertently learned when we were trying to cut the factory quarter panel off of the Speed 6 is that when you have an extension cord that is not up to snuff and you don't realize it, you almost think something's wrong with your plasma cutter, and then you sit there and you fuck with it constantly, and you wonder why it's not getting a good ground, and then you're cleaning up grounds. And then you stop being a stubborn male and you read the owner's manual and realize that they recommend not using an extension cord when possible. And then what happens is you unplug the extension cord and you realize that the plasma cutter is pretty fucking great.
Yep, yeah, it works very fast and very cleanly, actually.
It does. I mean, once we had figured out where we were going wrong, we had the quarter cut off that car in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was all fast.
Yeah, it was.
It actually cut through the pretty thick bumper material, too, because the inner bumper structure on the car was pretty rotten. So I just decided to chop it off and get it out of the way right away. So, I don't know. It's definitely a great investment, especially with customer cars coming up. I got the possibility of swapping some quarters on a Nova and doing some mini tubs. So that would definitely help make life a lot easier.
I tell you where it's really going to come in a lot better. Thinking about having to use the hole saw to cut out plates for fabrication and how long that takes.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm wanting you to fab a front core support for the RX-7 because for anybody that don't know, the factory FCs, the radiator's V-mounted, it's tilted like 15 degrees. And fitting a front mount is kind of challenging in an FC unless you want to cut the car up, which I absolutely refuse to do. So what I'm planning to do is to take the factory crash bar off and have us refab one in chromoly. That will give us more room to tuck this big ass front mount I want to put on it. Because I don't really want to V-mount the car, so being able to cut through that, 3/8 inch plate to have your footer plates for your crash support, the plasma cutter will do that in about 25 seconds.
Yeah.
And the hole saw will take a lot of lubrication, anxiety, and time. That is something we have come to grips with. So the plasma cutter, if you are doing a lot of fab jobs like we do, it's basically an essential tool because time's money.
And this one in particular, the Forney, I'm trying to remember what it is, the P20 I think it's called, Plasma 20 or something like that, Forney Easy Weld 20P or P20.
It's green.
It's very bright green. Kawasaki lovers rejoice. But no, for the price, I think it's like $400, and it's worth every penny.
Yeah, it is. And not only that, it's just fun to use the damn thing.
It is strictly a 110. It does have an optional plug to allow you to run a 20 amp circuit, but it still is a 110. So
it will cut up to 3/8.
yeah, it cuts pretty thick stuff still.
Yeah, 3/8 is probably what you're going to use for a majority of your fab. I mean, the sway bars, which, God, we got to repaint the damn Mirage sway bars.
Yeah.
But, like, the sway bar footers for the Mirage were, like, what, 1/4 inch? And 9 out of 10 times, you're probably not going to go over 3-inch plate, honestly. There's really not a huge need, unless, obviously, you're doing, like, roll cage. I think roll cage... I don't even think roll cage for FIA is over 3/8. I actually think 3/8 is the standard for FIA certification, so it would even cut those. And on any tubing, it'll cut pretty much any wall thickness you're ever gonna find if you wanted to cut your damn tubing with it. But
Right.
obviously, there's easier ways to do it. But for cutting your footers, that thing is pretty damn precise.
Oh yeah, especially if you use a straight edge to butt it up against. You'll be able to. It'd almost be like having a plasma table. It'd be able to cut in perfectly straight lines.
Yeah, I mean, for doing the rally car, which obviously that is still going on. For doing the rally car footers and doing some of the fab that is just required in the fabrication of a rally car, it would take a lot longer without that tool.
Yep.
That tool is pretty damn essential, and it earned my respect that night. I couldn't believe just how quickly it cut through the factory quarter and then the metal underneath that needed cut out. It made very easy work out of that.
Oh yeah.
That's just one of the things I know I definitely wanted to discuss, just because, yeah, the rally car is absolutely still happening, and we're just, as you said in the last podcast, kind of getting our driver status projects up to snuff.
Yeah, it's not a rush by any means. We were, at the start of the project, we were thinking that we'd have it done probably, within a mere week, but things change. Projects happen. Getting sick really slows things down, and I don't know, it's just one of those things where it's definitely something that we are looking forward to, but I don't know necessarily being in a rush about it. I'd rather take our time, do it right, because it is, imperative to our survival to do it right and take our time and do the cage correctly and make sure that everything is correct. So it's not a rush by any means.
Yeah, and scrutineers ain't gonna allow anything less anyway. they're
Oh yeah,
they're very, very particular about the job that you're doing. And you know, another big thing with Nathan and I, obviously, is we've been dieting pretty aggressively to get our asses more.
more suitable.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't think of driving a car as being physical, but it is. There's a lot of forces involved in racing a car, and the more you weigh, the more those forces act upon your body. So, being in better shape is going to make you perform better, and obviously it's going to allow the car to be lighter, and it's going to allow you to fit into a wider array of seats. And a lot of these seats are very, very tight, like you and I were talking about before the podcast. So yeah, you and I have both dropped quite a bit of weight. Just in the last month, we have done pretty damn well with that, and we're obviously still going very hard at our target.
I still got a long ways to go, but I've come a long ways. So
exactly, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's all part of the process, and being able to do what we want to do. And for me, I know I'd like to be able to fit into the cars better and fit into some of these seats a little bit better. So
I just gave all the dogs some pork rinds, so if you hear that massive crunching sound in the back.
Yeah, we definitely are not crunching crystal meth.
Or are we?
Perhaps. We got to fund this car somehow. But yeah, I mean, that's another just one of our personal updates, is not only bettering the build, but bettering ourselves along the way. And
yeah, being healthy in general.
yeah, I mean, the Rally Association says you got to be able to climb out of the window of your rally car, out of the window without opening the door in like 15 seconds. So if you're completely out of shape, well, that shit ain't happening. So
Yep. I think it's actually from fully buckled in. I'd imagine you have to be wearing your helmet too, so that's going to make things tighter. I think from fully buckled in position to out of the car in 30 seconds, I think is the...
yeah, it's pretty strict. So, you know, shedding off some excess poundage is definitely a very good idea, because the window of DSM isn't exactly the biggest space
Plus
anyway.
having a roll bar then in addition to, you know, the window space, it's gonna get pretty tight.
Yeah, to be exactly where I want to be, I've got exactly about 48 pounds to go, and but I've already dropped about 42 in total since I've started. So yeah, I mean, I feel a million times better, but I definitely want to get where I want to be, because God forbid something bad does happen. I don't want to be trying to squeeze my, you know, fat ass out of a side window. If I can avoid it. So
yep, what am I, down 38 pounds, and I still have about 40 to go yet until I'm satisfied, so it's definitely getting there, but...
oh yeah, I mean, we're doing pretty damn well. So Nathan convinced me to go on the damn keto diet. I was kind of nervous about it, but glad you talked me into it. It's been working out well, and now I've been getting out exercising, walking my mileage, and just doing all that stuff. So it's all part of it. It's all part of making this racing thing more of a reality. Plus, I know I want to do some high-performance driving events in the RX-7, so that car already has tight seats in it, and I want to fit even more aggressive seats into it. And when you have an RX-7, fitting wide seats isn't exactly an option, so you're pretty much constrained to the standard width seats, because the car itself just is not that wide.
Right.
So there's been a lot of motivation at play, and not only that, I'm just sick of being fat. So
yeah, no,
that's how dedicated to the car life we are.
Yeah.
We get into shape not for our image, but for our ability to drive at a higher level
and fit into certain vehicles.
Yeah, no. I'm telling you, one of these days I want to have my 911. So if I want it with the seats I want, yeah, it can't be real big. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we were just talking about before the podcast, it's just nice to know that when you're not overweight, that you can fit into almost any vehicle that you like. You know, obviously you're a taller person, where I'm a little bit shorter. I'm 5'9", where I'd be able to fit dang near anything. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a heavier, a much denser frame, I guess I want to say, because when I was like 215 pounds, I look like a rail. I could almost fit into a size 32 pants when I was 215 pounds. So it's like, I don't know, I'm much more dense bone matter or something like that, but I'm just very heavy even when I'm small. So it's like, I don't know, I should be able to fit into just about anything once I get to and that is my goal, is to be back to around 215. So.
Yeah, and you were real skinny at 215. And me, I start getting skinny at about 195, and I've got about 5 inches on you, so it's kind of hysterical. But yeah, you definitely have the gift of being able to fit into pretty much anything you want. Me, it's a little tighter because I'm really long-legged. So some of these cars I really enjoy, I have to like kink my knees around steering columns and shit.
Yep.
It can be a little challenging, but I know I could drive pretty much anything back when I was, a rail of a person, versus now, where if I wanted to go drive a Cayman GT4, they would have to enlarge the door opening with a can opener. But yeah, I mean, we're well on our way, and obviously that thing is still very much a go. I know we've both been really excited about it, and I'm just ready to do the damn thing.
Yep.
Get our cars underway so we can enjoy our cars this summer and have the rally car ready to go, because that's something you can enjoy all year round.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Snowdrift is a real big deal.
Yes. Once we have that going, as long as we can keep it going, we can function all year round. We don't have to. There is no off season with rally. So
No, that is the nice thing. And I mean, obviously there's your dirt trails, but then the snowdrift thing is as we said, a very big deal.
yep.
And
It's considered more or less like a season opener, but it just opens up the new year. So
yeah, it's something I know I'd like to partake in.
yes, for sure.
The laser will be a lot of fun in a snowy environment. I just know it.
Oh yeah.
But that's one of our updates there. And shoot, my brain's so scattered because I'm so sleep deprived. But yeah, that's definitely one of our obviously big ambitions that obviously is going to come to fruition. But we wanted to kind of update that as well. I know you've been taking on more and more customer jobs, and these BMWs, man.
Yep, lots of BMW stuff going on.
Lots of Euro cars in general, yeah. I mean, obviously you went over to Bruce's and you did some work on his 6 Series.
Yeah, he brought it up here. We did a cat delete, catless downpipe, same way like what we did on his 5 Series. Same engine, the N55. So it was kind of like deja vu, but in a 6 Series instead of a 5 Series.
Did you fab that one?
The one in the 5 Series I did. The one
Right.
in the 6 Series I did not.
I didn't know if you fabbed that one or not.
I think the reasoning behind that was because it was kind of when he purchased the catless downpipe for the 6 Series was in the time that I told him that I was fed up with working on cars.
Oh,
so I think
that makes sense.
So he was kind of just planning on just buying it, and I don't think they're too expensive. The VRSF is the one that he ended up going with, so I don't want to bash them. You get what you pay for. It's not the most expensive. Could have been a little bit better quality in my opinion, but still a nice looking piece to go on the car. So
I mean, the one you fabbed for the F10 turned out beautifully, and
a lot more time, well, obviously pie cuts take a lot more time.
Oh yeah. Powershiftmedia.net fab tab, you can see that there if you haven't already seen it. That piece was sexy, and it's held up quite well.
Yeah. Yep.
And that, I mean, yeah, we've buttoned up the turbo on that. That thing's operational again. We have a Mark IV Volkswagen sitting outside, and that E60. You've been commissioned to do more work to the 545 since we've last discussed it.
Yep.
That owner okayed you to do the bushings and the shit that thing really does need because, well, you can tell it just hadn't had very much attention.
No, that poor car. Which it is gone, by the way. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, did you get it all done?
I didn't do that because he couldn't afford to do the stuff that it needed, but we did the bare minimum to get it running and driving, so.
Yeah, I didn't even notice it was gone.
It drove all the way to Florida.
No shit.
Yep.
Wow, very nice.
So,
I know that oil leak. What was wrong with the miss on it? Would you just need the
coil
tune-up?
packs.
That's what I thought.
Yep. It had newer coil packs on it, but apparently Delphi coil packs are not a good choice for BMW engines. So, I mean,
They're temperamental.
I put the new spark plugs in it, and it kind of helped, but he ended up changing out the coil packs on it because it was kind of one of those things where it was spark plugs were only kind of a chance probability, given that the coil packs are notoriously junk on those.
It was going to need them anyway, no matter
so
what.
It needed them anyways. He swapped them out and proceeded to drive it all the way to Florida. But that car, I mean, I hate to talk bad about it, but that thing was a suspension disaster. The transmission needed overhauled in it. It was leaking everywhere. The body was beat up on it, but it's so sad because it is it was a rare option car. It was an individual package car.
The interior's still nice.
Yeah, the
That's
interior
the silver lining.
was very nice, but about everything else, the car you could tell had been repainted,
yeah,
very cheaply along along the line, and
a lot of orange peel.
It's sad to see a car like that because you said that was like a $60,000 or $70,000 car when it was new.
Yeah, I mean
the options that it was. And
when
it was
I had decoded it, that thing was a very uniquely optioned M Sport car, cold weather package, individual, sport seats. I mean, it had everything just the way you would want it, but unfortunately, it was just neglected over the years, which is the case for so many of these older BMWs. And it's kind of sad because I remember looking at E60s and the deal were brand new. Yep. And now, we're sitting here calling them older BMWs.
Yep. And they show it. I mean, certain ones have been treated much better. Like many of the M5s, they didn't see the similar fate, but I don't know. That car is the perfect example of, like, I think what we were talking in the last podcast. Get that kind of car that needs the love, bring it back to life, and show it the respect that it is. Been, I guess, lacking or was neglected to see over the years. So I don't know. It's just one of those things where you hate to see cars like that come in, but when you get the opportunity to work on them and bring them back, it gives you that sense of gratification.
Right. And honestly, just knowing that thing had that massive of an oil leak that would have absolutely destroyed the motor, and the fact that it was running on maybe 5 cylinders, and just knowing that you're able to pull it back apart, get it where it needed to be, at least from a mechanical standpoint, maybe not necessarily an all-around perfect driver standpoint, at least it's back on the road. It's eating miles, and hopefully the owner of the car will be able to get around to what the damn thing needs as time goes on. But for now, it's at least back on the road.
Yep.
And that thing absolutely, when it hit this driveway, was not remotely even go 10 feet worthy.
Nope. Had rolled in on a spare. The one tire was destroyed. We got a new tire on it. Put a new belt, new plugs.
That fucking alternator oil cooler delete bracket.
The alternator gasket. Believe it or not, there is such a thing. The
sure is.
Alternator oil gasket.
As soon as you said that, it clicked to me immediately because I'm like, oh yeah, cars that didn't have high-speed synchronization didn't have oil coolers, and that's how they blocked them off, very crudely.
Yep. And that plate that you mount the alternator to is behind the engine mount bracket, so you can't just unbolt the alternator bracket, or you can't just unbolt the alternator, then unbolt the alternator bracket, change the gasket. No, you have to
Pull all the
remove
pulleys
the
and
alternator. Yep, remove your belt, remove the alternator, all the idler pulleys going to the alternator, around the alternator, pull the bracket. Then, in my instance, the car on the lift, you have to then support the engine, take the weight off of the engine mount, undo the engine mount, remove the engine mount bracket itself. Then you can proceed to remove the alternator bracket. Then change out the gasket that is literally no larger than, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
Probably about 4x6.
It's an odd shaped gasket.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that. Maybe like a 2x3 square inch.
Yeah, it's
little
not
gasket.
big.
Do that, then proceed to reverse the process, put everything back together, but it was so dry rotted and cracked that the gasket was so hard and brittle. I think it came out in like 7 pieces, and it's like not a very big gasket at all.
Yeah, BMW in their infinite wisdom, I have no idea why they thought that would be a great idea, but they did.
Which leads me to wonder if it's the same amount of difficulty on a car that does have the external oil cooler. Because it still has the same gasket, but the housing would be a little bit different. The alternator bracket, I guess.
I was going to say, on the cars with high-speed synchronization, the oil cooler, it's not very big to begin with, but it's located directly off the filter housing, which is put it this way, I would never buy an N54 car that did not have high-speed sync, because adding an oil cooler is a bitch. So basically got to swap filter housings and some other ancillary parts.
Being the V8.
Yeah, it's a little different.
Because the oil filter is actually directly into the bottom of the oil pan.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
See, I didn't even know that.
So I'm almost wondering if it's like a housing that would maybe offer some bosses to be able to run lines off of up to the front
Most
of the car.
likely. Yeah, almost DSM-like.
Right.
Yeah, on N54 cars, it's just directly off of the filter housing. And if you buy a car that doesn't have high-speed sync, you have to swap the filter housing, you have to swap some other components to get it to that level. And cars like the N54 already have such high oil temps. I couldn't imagine not having a cooler on it. I wouldn't buy one that didn't have it. Like, that's the best BMW advice I'll probably ever give in this podcast, is decode your VIN and make sure it had it. Because if not, well, that engine's probably been through hell. Because even with the cooler, they still run way hotter than what they probably should.
Same thing that killed the RX-8 engines. I mean,
it's all
for economy. That's all it is. They run these super high oil temps, super high coolant temps, because a hotter engine runs more efficient. But what does a hotter engine do? It, imposes a lot more thermal stress to the metals, and everything around it breaks down the oil a lot faster, and it's just going to kill your engine.
Yeah, it's definitely what killed the Renesis rotary for sure. That's a great point right there, is that those things ran such high oil cooler thermostats and coolant thermostats that that engine just never really stood a chance, because those side seals and shit, if they get overheated, well, that's goodbye motor.
It was all the same technology from back in the 80s. Literally, the inside of a Renesis engine is hardly any different. You can literally use an RX-8 eccentric shaft and all the way to an S4 Turbo 2 engine. So it's like...
Sure can.
And that starts in 1987. A Renesis engine ended in what, like 08?
Yes, I think it was 08 or 10, and really
so
the only...
over a 20-year span, and it's the same thing, but they're running these engines so much hotter with thinner oil. That's why they were seeing main bearing failure within 30,000 miles on these engines.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the only fundamental difference with the Renesis was the exhaust ports were on the irons instead of on the aluminum housings. Yeah, and if anything, that probably heat soaked the intake track even more anyway. I can only imagine
sure.
it did. So, yeah, those poor engines never really had a chance. Mazda saying they're wanting to bring it back out. There's been a lot of rumors, and I hope they do. And
it's rumored to be direct injection.
yeah,
And
obviously turbocharged, which the RX-8 should have been to begin
it
with.
should have, yeah.
That would have helped emissions anyway, but rotaries don't like cat converters, and they love to burn oil, and that's a big problem in today's climate because the EPA is a bunch of assholes.
Yep. But now with the technology and the low ash, like the Idemitsu oil, I'm sure that it's probably going to be a factory, oil for this new turbocharged and rotary engine because it is a low ash or no ash oil when it does burn. So
Porsche has been a kind of pioneer of putting exhaust filters on gasoline engines, so look, we're enthusiasts. We're going to ditch that shit anyway, but it's not to say that Mazda couldn't put some kind of particulate filter in the exhaust track just to make the EPA happy, and then people like you and I grab a plasma cutter and we remove it because, well, that's just what we do.
Yep.
But I hope to see it reborn because they're allowed to race Le Mans again, so that tells me Mazda's probably going to have an interest in bringing that engine back out to homologate it, if nothing else, to try to go on maybe win Le Mans again. So I hope it happens because somebody has to fucking beat Audi, like for real.
What a better way to bring it back in rotary fashion and win it like they did back in the early 90s.
You know, it'd be badass if they figure out how to make the rotary into a diesel and then go whip Audi's ass with the diesel of their own.
I
don't see why you couldn't make a rotary into a diesel.
Yeah,
I really don't.
I don't think Mazda in general has, but I think I've seen where they do, like people have made their own diesel rotary engines.
Mercedes-Benz experimented with the rotary on the Wankel design. They ditched it because it's not an easy engine to make work, and honestly, the only people that ever did successfully make it work was Mazda, essentially. But I know Mercedes-Benz did experiment with it back in the day, and they pretty quickly ditched it. But I think they were trying to do it as a diesel, which makes kind of a lot of sense because you could probably rev that diesel higher than its, piston and crankshaft counterpart, and that'd be kind of cool. Mazda does some of the weirdest engineering of shit with like the Skyactiv engines, which literally vary compression, and then this gasoline engine can run without ignition. They can run without the ignition system firing.
Essentially vary it from a gasoline to a dieseling effect in the engine.
It's exactly what it does. When the engine is exactly in a stoichiometric environment and all the parameters the ECU wants to see are kosher, that shit will run without firing the ignition system. And Mazda, I believe, pioneered that technology. Skyactiv's been out for probably about 12, 13 years.
It's really weird how it works, too, the way that it varies the length of the stroke.
It's pretty cool, though. It just tells you that, they definitely kind of have an idea what it is that they're trying to do. And they have damn good engineers. So to me, there's no reason the rotary can't come back out and meet emissions.
Yeah, especially because look at Ford. They just brought out a 7.3 liter gasoline engine.
Which is fucking sweet.
Yeah, and I mean, it's up to 2020 emission standards. Come on, they got to be able to make a rotary.
Especially turbocharged.
Yes.
Well, we're coming up on 59 minutes. I think that'd be a good place to wrap.
Yeah.
Usually we do like 2 hours, but I literally have had 3 hours of sleep in the last 36 because my Saturdays really suck. So, on that note, we do hope you guys like the improved audio. Obviously, I know some of the dogs got a little crazy a couple times.
Yeah, there was a raccoon on the back porch, and they flipped out, so.
It should still very much be improved, and, we're going to keep tying it together more and more, but next weekend we'll shoot to maybe do it on Sunday, so I won't be so tired. So I apologize to all you, but it feels good just to get something back out to you guys. So before we time out, this is Matt.
And this is Nathan.
Reminding you, doesn't matter if you drive a BMW, an Audi, or a Rotary. Get out there, modify, maintain, and drive your shit, especially with this COVID stuff, and everybody be safe. Later.
See ya.